All right, y'all. First things first, before we get into the wild update that I have for you guys today, I just want to say that I am beyond blessed and grateful and thankful for God for putting breath in my lungs this morning so that I could wake up and live this life with my beautiful wife and my children, my family. I'm not planning on taking any vacations. I'm not planning on going on any sabbaticals, or I'm not planning on going on any hiatuses or none like that. I'm healthy, physically, mentally, strong as a bull, as they say. And I say that to say there's some individuals that are not too fond of a specific story that I have been covering. Now, I've only made a couple videos on this story. And for some reason, out of all of the stories that I've covered, and I think people could say that, you know, there have been quite a bit of controversial stories that I've covered. The first story that would potentially get me sued is by one of the largest Christian, emphasis on the Christian, television networks, Daystar and Joni Lamb. They sent me a letter while I was at the grocery store, mind you. I got a notification. And it said this: Texas Defamation Mitigation Act request for correction, clarification, or retraction of statements made by Nick Jones in connection with the video uploaded by myself on my YouTube channel. It says, Dear Mr. Jones, that's me. I represent Daystar Television Network and Joni Lamb. Pursuant to the Texas Defamation Mitigation Act, please let this letter serve as a formal written request for a correction or retraction of statements that were recently made in a video uploaded on the Nick Von Jones YouTube channel. A correction or retraction is what they are seeking in this matter. Very interesting. It's almost as if they didn't even watch the video at all. As you know, the video published on November 24th primarily discusses the allegations that were recently published in 2 articles by the Roy's Report. The entire premise of the statements published in those articles is a complete fabrication built on baseless allegations of sexual abuse and supposed cover-ups. Enclosed in this letter, please find a letter that I also sent to Julie Royce, pursuant to the Texas Defamation Mitigation Act, that identifies the false statements that were published in the Roy's Reports articles, as well as a brief explanation as to why each of the identified statements was false. I am also enclosing a letter that I sent to Jonathan and Susie Lamb, pursuant to the Defamation Mitigation Act, that identifies the false statement that they have recently made. Now, that is true. They sent me all of like 20-something pages. They sent me what they sent to Julie. They also sent me the same copy that they sent to Jonathan and Susie Lamb. I don't know why they sent that to me, but that is true. I do have those documents as well. Because the November 24th video conveys those same falsehoods and further defames and damages my clients, please let this letter serve as a request for you to retract the November 24th video in its entirety. Very interesting. Now, here's the thing. Potentially, what would happen, say I don't retract or correct the statements that I made? And there's 12 specific statements that I made that they're wanting me to retract or correct. And it seems like they want me to take down the entire video, right? And we're going to go through each one of those statements step by step. line by line. But first things first, just so you kind of know the severity of this case and the severity of this situation, they go on to say that, let me make a full screen. They go on to say, as a result of the foregoing, demand is hereby made for you to correct or retract the false statements as set forth above that were made by you via the Nick Jones channel on November 24th, 2024. As set forth in Texas Civil Practice and Remedies, the correction or retraction shall be published in the same manner and medium as the original publication, or with a prominence and in a manner and medium reasonably likely to reach substantially the same audience as the publication complained of. Please let me know if and when the requested correction or retraction will be published. Please be further advised that Daystar and Joni Lamb reserve all available legal rights available to them, including but not limited to, it's very threatening verbiage, filing a lawsuit for republishing the defamatory statements that Jonathan and Susie have fabricated. And then it goes on to say that one who repeats or otherwise republishes or otherwise republishes defamatory material is subject to liability as if he had originally published it. Under Texas law, a person who repeats a defamatory statement made initially by another person can be held responsible for republishing the libelous statement. I don't know how to say that. I don't know how to say that. So if I don't retract or correct the video and the statements, and like I said, there's 12 statements. We're going to go through all 12 statements. You can see 10 of them on the screen right now, but we'll go through each and every one of them, and I'll give you my response to each and every one of them. If I don't do that, then they're going to sue me or other stuff, which is very vague. I'm not sure what they're going to do to me. And, initially, as they said, please let this letter serve as a request for you to retract the November 24th video in its entirety. Please let this video serve as my response that I will not retract or correct any of the statements. Not a single statement. I'm sorry, that was aggressive. Not a single statement that I made during the video published on November 24th. Had you watched the video, had you not just gone through and cherry-picked phrases and cherry-picked statements that I made out of context, then you would have realized that my reporting on this issue was fair, was balanced. I presented both sides. And I clearly made multiple phrases which indicated my uncertainty to the allegations. And yes, I did clearly state that these were allegations. And it's convenient, it's very convenient that you don't even include the title of the video. You don't even include the title of the video. You simply said, please let this letter serve as a formal written request for a correction or retraction of statements that were made recently in a video uploaded on the Nick Von Jones YouTube channel on November 24th. A video. You don't even put the title of the video. The title has been unchanged since I posted the video. And conveniently, that was left out, right? I clearly said the Daystar allegations, keyword, allegations, left me speechless. And the only thing untrue about this title is this part, speechless, because now I have a lot to say. Let me start in reverse. Let me start in reverse. I'm going to pull up a clip from the video in question. Give me 1 second. With a written statement. Here we go. This is from the video in question, with detailed questions about the allegation. Let me slow the speed down. I'll go to 1.25. Stood dumbfounded. Okay, here we go. Let's start here. This is from the video in question. TRR reached out to Joni Lamb with detailed questions about the allegations Susie and Jonathan leveled against her and Marcus, as well as other issues. Daystar responded with a written statement, which in part said, "This is clearly a misunderstanding of what transpired, and the facts are quite different than what appears to have been reported to you. We simply do not support Jonathan and Susie's false allegations and are saddened by the continued relational incongruity between Jonathan and Susie and the rest of their family." Once again, I read that statement during that video, clearly displaying both sides of these allegations. And that's not the only time that I displayed both sides of the allegations. That's just one instant. That's one instance where I clearly said that you guys do not support these false allegations and that you're saddened by the continued relational incongruity between Jonathan, Susie, and the rest of the family. Okay? So that's one part. The second part relates to literally the very first statement that you're asking me to retract, which I guess we'll just get into all of them right now. So there's 12 statements, right? And the first statement is, but I guess they were on some type of network vacation, some type of network retreat as a family, and one of their daughters was assaulted. From my understanding, the assault was suppressed. You guys said that this statement is false. Jonathan and Susie's daughter was not assaulted on the annual Daystar Executive Retreat. Additionally, there was no cover-up of any sexual assault. This is part of an overall false narrative being used to falsely accuse Pete of sexual abuse and Joni Lamb of covering it up. Okay. Let's go back to the original video and show a clip in reference to number one, what I just read. Okay. Let's go here. Read this article real quick. says, oh man, this is a lot of reading. Y'all know I'm not the best with words. On a hot August day in Florida, 2021, then Daystar TV executive Jonathan Lamb was summoned by his frightened wife, Susie, Pete, one of their male relatives, who followed their 5-year-old daughter upstairs as the girl was going to change to go swimming. It's like Pete's eyes went black and he's in zombie mode, Susie recounted to the Rose Report. In an exclusive interview, Jonathan rushed into his daughter's upstairs room at a beach house Daystar rented for its annual executive retreat in Miramar Beach. To my horror, when I got up there, my daughter was completely naked and he was in the room, said Jonathan. And I was immediately like, what are you doing? Screaming at the top of my lungs. And he is like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He apologized like 50 times. Like I caught somebody red-handed. Susie added that Pete was usually cocky and confident, but he was trembling and shaking on the verge of tears. So they're not revealing who Pete is in this identity. That's just an alias because nobody's been officially charged with a crime, right? Very important statement that I just said. It says TRR is not revealing Pete's identity because he has not been charged with a crime. Now, I used the word alias, and what I meant by that is that they're using the name Pete as a placeholder for the sake of this article. That's not the actual identity of the person in question, right? But what I said next was more important, is that he has not been charged with a crime. That's what was said in the original article, that he had not been charged with a crime. And that's what I stated at the beginning of the video. But there's this reoccurring theme that I'm seeing in these statements that you sent that you want me to retract. The reoccurring theme is that you're intentionally leaving out context that go with these claims, right? You're intentionally leaving it out. You said this is part of the overall false narrative being used to falsely accuse Pete of sexual abuse and Joni Lamb of covering it up. I stated that nobody has been charged with a crime. That's what I stated. That's what I stated. I did not make any definitive statements pointing to the fact that he's guilty. I did not make any definitive statements pointing to the fact that Joni Lamb covered it up. In fact, all throughout the video, I continue to use phrases that indicate my uncertainty about these allegations. And even in the very first, quote unquote, false statement, the very first false statement that you're asking me to retract, in the first 3 words, but I guess, but I guess they were on some type of network vacation, right? I guess it was some type of retreat as a family. One of their daughters was assaulted. From my understanding, the assault was suppressed. There's multiple phrases indicating my uncertainty, but I guess is one of them. And from my understanding is the other one. Guess. Verb. To form an opinion of from little or no evidence. I'm clearly stating that this is an opinion that has been formed from little or no evidence. And I also said, from my understanding, which means based on what I know or according to my interpretation of the information, essentially indicating that the speaker is sharing information based on their own comprehension of a situation and may not be completely definitive. Number two, and that's why they wanted an NDA. So these claims couldn't be spoken about and potentially hurt the reputation of Daystar, which ultimately would hurt, the revenue and finances, the people's pockets and the legacy of Daystar. So this is another one of those claims that is completely cherry picked and lacks the context necessary to understand what exactly I was referring to. Hold on, let me play the clip. Mom. Protecting the brand. And that's why they wanted an NDA. Not signing the NDA. Now, I guess there's a lot of, and this is why I said I didn't really want to talk about this because there's so many different narratives. Once again, there's so many different narratives. There's a lot of different narratives. I guess one of the primary narratives is money and power and protecting the brand Daystar. But I guess one of the primary narratives is money and power and protecting the brand Daystar. That's what I said. So right before I said the statement in number 2, I said but I guess, because there's so many different narratives, one of the primary narratives is money and power. And then I said, and that's why they wanted an NDA. So these claims couldn't be spoken about and potentially hurt the reputation of Daystar, which ultimately would hurt, the revenue and finances in people's pockets and the legacy of Daystar. This is a narrative that has been floated around. This is a narrative, which is essentially a story. This is an account that has been circulating across the internet. And once again, I said, I guess this is one of the narratives. An opinion with little or no evidence. And if you watch the whole clip, which we'll watch the entire clip, you'll see once again that I give this narrative, the money, the power, the use of the NDA and stuff like this. I give this narrative and then I give the other narrative. But you don't talk about the other narrative. I'm giving both sides. Let's continue. So that it wouldn't be tainted or tarnished in any way, shape, or form. And that's why they wanted an NDA. So these claims couldn't be spoken about and potentially hurt the reputation of Daystar, which ultimately would hurt, revenue and finances in people's pockets and the quote unquote legacy of Daystar, which is a silly concept because ultimately, if you're gonna build a platform, if you're gonna build a network, no matter what it is, a platform, a network, a following, no matter what it is, if you're gonna build that and you're doing it in the form of a ministry, that platform, that network, that's God's. It's not yours. That's God's. And you're a steward of that platform. You're a steward of that network. But it's ultimately God who is in control of it. But when you make money, when you're seeing $100 million per year, when your company is valued at $1 billion, you start to lose sight of whose network it actually is. And your heart starts to get hardened. And you start to look for ways to protect your resources that you've accumulated through this network. That's one of the primary narratives. Now, there's some secondary narratives about this story that I'm not going to speak about right now because I haven't looked into it to really give my opinion on it. But I guess the thing I can say is, like, essentially the secondary narratives are this is all fabricated, that this is false, which I guess would be an obvious secondary narrative because of course they're going to decline these allegations because they look horrible. So I presented both sides. The first narrative is that this is a ploy, or this is, you know, what I said in the first narrative. And then the second narrative was that this is all fabricated. Which is exactly what you said. So before you even sent me this letter, I presented that narrative as well and said that this is all fabricated as being a secondary narrative. Now, the reason why I said it's a secondary narrative is because I think if you, once again, I guess, there's growing speculation amongst the internet that the allegations made are potentially leaning more so in the direction of potentially something happened to the little girl. That's the primary narrative that's being speculated and floated around the internet. So that's why I said that's the primary one. But I acknowledge the fact that there is a secondary narrative that this is all fabricated. Which is an allegation. It could be completely fabricated. So, what's the problem with number 2? Number 3. So they fired the co-founder's son. That's wild. That doesn't happen. You just look at any family business, and that just speaks to the fact that there's some shady stuff going on. Okay, let's talk about number 3. Where's number 3? Let me get the clip for number 3. It says, then last Saturday, Daystar fired Jonathan because he failed to address the deficiencies in your judgment and performance. So they fired her, or him, Jonathan. They fired Jonathan, whose parents co-founded the network. They fired him for deficiencies in his judgment and performance. Stop there. Once again, more context being left out. You said that I said, so they fired the co-founder's son. That's wild, which I did say. That doesn't happen. You just look at any family business, and that just speaks to the fact that there's some shady stuff going on. You said this statement is false. Jonathan was fired because he failed to adhere to a performance improvement plan instituted to correct his poor job performance. This statement is part of the overall false narrative being used to falsely accuse Pete of sexual abuse and Joni Lamb of covering it up. You said Jonathan was fired because he failed to adhere to a performance improvement plan instituted to correct his poor job performance. And you said that that is the reason why this statement that I said was false. That's exactly what I said. That's exactly what I said too. Co-founded the network. They fired him. Daystar fired Jonathan because he failed to address the deficiencies in your judgment and performance. So they fired her, or him, Jonathan, They fired Jonathan, whose parents co-founded the network. They fired him for deficiencies in his judgment and performance. So he wasn't meeting performance metrics and his judgment was poor. So they fired the co-founder's son. That's wild. That doesn't happen. You just look at any family business, and that just speaks to the fact that there's some shady stuff going on. You look at any family business, you ain't gonna fire the son of the co-founders. Maybe they do, but typically you don't, because that's the operation, that's the ministry that your family co-founded. Of course, you would think that the parents would want to give that off to their children so that they can continue that for the Lord. Once again, I think the issue with this statement is that maybe you guys are upset that I said that there's some shady stuff going on. I think maybe that's the problem here. Because clearly I said the reason why he was fired matches with the correction that you want me to say. There's no correction. That's what I said. I think it's the fact that I said that that's wild. That doesn't happen. You just look at any family business, and that just speaks to the fact that there's some shady stuff going on. Now, what's the problem with the fact that I said that there's some shady stuff going on? Is there not? Shady, adjective, of questionable merit. There's some shady stuff going on. Uncertain is another word to describe the use of shady. Uncertain, unreliable. Clearly, you have one side that's making allegations. You have one side that is denying allegations. You have another side making allegations. You have another side denying allegations. Clearly, there's uncertainty. So don't get offended because I chose to use the word shady. Don't get offended because I said that that doesn't happen. And then I went back and I said, sometimes, maybe. And then I continued and I said, you would think that since this is a family business, that you would want your son, your family, to take over at some point in time. You wouldn't think that there would be this type of conflict that would lead to him being fired. I don't understand how that could be interpreted as being defaming to your character, Miss Joni Lamb. Let's go to number 4. According to Jonathan and Susie, this is what I said. According to Jonathan and Susie, Marcus and Joni consistently fought to protect Pete and Daystar's image rather than their own granddaughter. I don't even think I have to really explain this one in the form of showing a clip. I clearly make a very clear statement indicating my uncertainty and indicating that this is speculation by saying according to. According to Jonathan and Susie, this is what they presented. According to Jonathan and Susie. You guys responded and you said, this statement is false. Marcus and Joni did not and would not protect Pete and Daystar's image at the expense of their own granddaughter. This is part of the overall false narrative being used to falsely accuse Pete of sexual abuse and Joni Lamb covering it up. As I had already said, before that video ended, I clearly stated that you, Joni Lamb, did not agree with these allegations and you said that they were false. Now, you said them in your own words in your own statement, but I clearly included that statement. Number 5. So this is the granddaughter of the co-founder and her new husband who had been assaulted. You guys said this statement is false. Joni's granddaughter was not assaulted by Pete. This is part of the overall false narrative being used to falsely accuse Pete of sexual abuse and Joni Lamb of covering it up. Once again, you're picking and choosing specific moments out of context to make it appear as if I'm trying to defame your character when I clearly have been representing both sides. I think the issue here, to take it to a deeper level, I think the issue here is you can sense some bias in my reporting. And that's my personal conviction, because just naturally, if I hear of a case involving a minor and abuse, my natural inclination in my heart is to side with that potential alleged victim. That's my conviction. That's my personal conviction. And I think that's the problem, and that's the issue, and that's the reason why you want me to retract all of these statements and take down this video, is because you can sense that I have a bias, because naturally my heart is pointed towards the potential alleged victim who happens to be a minor. And that's my personal conviction. And you can't sit here and tell me as Christians, to retract my personal convictions. Number 6, police closed the case. Later it was reopened when Jonathan caught Pete alone in a room with his naked daughter. You guys said this statement is false. Pete was not alone in a room with Jonathan and Susie's daughter while she was naked. This is part of the overall false narrative being used to falsely accuse Pete of sexual abuse and Joni Lamb of covering it up. Once again, this speaks to many different points, but the point that I'll mention right here is the fact that I literally said the Daystar allegations. I clearly indicated in the title that these are allegations. Once again, this title has never been changed. It's been the same since I posted it. Number 7. Why would you, and this is another deceptive one. This one actually made me really upset that they included this, because this is so deceptive. Number 7, I said, why would you be so protective of somebody who allegedly abused your granddaughter? It's almost as if it's like someone has something else on you that could be detrimental to you in some way, shape, or form. So this is what I said. This is very deceptive because, once again, it's taken completely out of context. Let me show you the clip. It almost feels like, and this is complete speculation, everything that I'm about to say. Hold on. Wait. Listen closely. Listen. Listen.
It almost feels like, and this is complete speculation, that I'm about to say.
This is complete speculation, everything that I'm about to say. But conveniently, y'all left that part out, right? Right? Listen, Jonathan and Susie said. It almost feels like, and this is complete speculation, everything that I'm about to say. Why would you be so protecting of somebody who allegedly abused your granddaughter? It's almost as if it's like if somebody has something else on you that could be detrimental to you in some way, shape, or form that they could use against you in exchange for your protection in this situation. Like that's the only thing that makes sense in my eyes. Or the fact that they're just so hyper fixated on protecting the reputation of their business. Or the fact that, yo, these are just some wolves in sheep's clothing. I honestly don't know. That was one complete run-on statement. I started out with, this is complete speculation, and then I end it with, I honestly don't know. But yet the only part that you chose to highlight was the part where I said, why would you be so protective of somebody who allegedly abused your granddaughter? It's almost as if it's like somebody has something else on you that could be detrimental to you in some way, shape, or form. Your guys' response was, this statement is false. Joni did not protect anyone who abused her granddaughter, nor would she. This is part of the overall false narrative. And once again, copy and paste statement. This is part of the overall false narrative being used to accuse Pete of sexual abuse and Joni Lamb of covering it up. I also said in that same run-on statement, which started out with, this is complete speculation, and ended with, I honestly don't know. In that same run-on statement, I also said they're just so hyper fixated on protecting the reputation of their business. Completely lacks context and is honestly very disheartening from a Christian organization, the way that you presented these statements against me to make it seem like I'm intentionally trying to defame your organization and your character. You guys said this statement is false, or at the very least is intended to convey the false implication that Joni Lamb participated in a cover-up to protect Daystar's reputation. Copy and paste. Joni did not cover up any sexual abuse to protect Daystar, nor would she. Actually, that's the only time you didn't copy and paste. You know, you could have just sent me an email with these statements instead of sitting here and threatening legal action against a fellow Christian platform. You could have just contacted me with these statements. But instead, for whatever reason, you decided to take it here, which, oh, by the way, some people would say speculation suggests that this approach was a terrible move. Number 9, you are hanging out with her butt naked. You are hanging out with her butt naked. Number 9. Let me pull the clip up. I think it's somewhere around 23 minutes. Let me see if I can find it. Somewhere around 23 minutes. What type of perverted love is that? There it is, right here. I got it. These are just some wolves. We heard that part. Marcus and Joni justified Pete's presence in the girl's room by saying Pete loved her and simply wanted to hang out with her. You are hanging out with her butt naked. What type of perverted love is that? Somebody please explain that to me. Susie added that when she strongly objected, saying that didn't happen, why Pete was in the room and with her naked daughter, Joni blamed the couple's daughter, saying she was the one who took her clothes off. At this, Susie said she began screaming. Susie added that when she strongly objected, saying that she didn't explain why Pete was in the room with her naked daughter, Joni blamed the couple's daughter, saying she was the one who took her clothes off. Marcus and Joni justified Pete's presence in the girl's room. Marcus and Joni justified Pete's presence in the girl's room by saying Pete loved her and simply wanted to hang out with her. And then I said, let me pull that back up again. I said, you're hanging out with her butt naked. And I said, what type of perverted love is that? At this point, we're sitting here and telling me that I can't have any reaction whatsoever that would be seemingly negative towards you in any way, shape, or form. I'm reading an article. I'm reacting to the words that I'm reading and giving an opinion based on my interpretation of what I'm reading, which is just an absolutely heartbreaking story on so many levels, is crazy. So when I say you're hanging out with her butt naked, I'm reacting to the statements, the allegations that are being made. I'm not adding any additional information that would be defaming your character. I'm simply reacting to the statements and the allegations that are being made that they were in the room together, naked, and there were abuse that took place, allegedly. Number 10. It's a very similar story in terms of this was also brought up and seemingly handled in a very similar manner to the last allegation that we spoke about in terms of it was largely brushed off. Let me show that to you. That is 2422. Let me pull it up. 2422. Susie Lamb said she was pressured to hide her essay. So apparently there was a chiropractor that was hired for Susie. I guess this is something that happened often. Not the assault, but she would get treatment by a chiropractor often. But typically what would happen is the treatment would be with a chaperone. So there would be somebody else in there with them, like chaperoning the situation. And allegedly, I don't know what happened, but I guess there wasn't a chaperone in this instance. And the individual assaulted her. And this individual wasn't even a licensed chiropractor. And this was somebody that was contracted by Daystar. Now, allegedly, I don't know what happened. Keep that in mind. Very similar story to what we just read. And I'm not going to go through the whole article and read it. But it's a very similar story in terms of this was also brought up and seemingly handled in a very similar manner to the last allegation that we spoke about. This was also brought up and seemingly handled in a very similar manner to the last allegation that was just brought up. This, meaning this allegation, was also handled in a similar manner to the previous allegation that we brought up, which includes the allegation that the allegation was brushed off. In terms of it was largely brushed off. I don't even know what type of corruption is even going on in that organization. That's a statement that they didn't like either. Hold on, let me read it. I said, I don't even know what type of corruption is going on in that. I think that's number 11. Number 11. Here we go. Number 11. I don't even know what type of corruption is going on in that organization. It feels incestuous. Incestuous. I still can't say that word. Even in a legal document, I can't even pronounce it correctly. Let's go back there. Let's go back here because I have a lot to say about that too. I'm going to say this, and this is just me thinking out loud. It feels incestual. You know what I'm saying? Like it feels like, because it just feels very strange what's happening there. So you're upset because of a feeling that I expressed on camera. You're upset because I said, I just don't even know. There's that statement again. There's that phrase indicating uncertainty. I just don't even know what type of corruption is even going on in that organization. I don't know what type. Correct? I don't know what type. I don't. A dishonest corruption. Noun. A dishonest or illegal behavior, especially by powerful people, such as government officials or police officers. Depravity. Inducement to wrong by improper or unlawful means, such as bribery. A departure from the original or from what is pure or correct. Obviously, there has been a departure from what is pure or correct. Obviously. If that's not the case, then we wouldn't even be talking about this story. So when I say I don't know what type of corruption, I don't. And once again, I didn't pinpoint either side. I didn't say either side. I'm saying overall, I don't know what type of corruption is even going on. I don't. I don't know what happened that caused them to deviate from what is pure and what is correct, and being a unit, being a family, and because this stuff is wild. Allegedly, sources would say, right? Because I wasn't there and you weren't there, but some people are very confident. You know what I'm saying? And then lastly, which might be one of my favorite ones that they want me to retract, I said, obviously there is something much deeper going on. Which, do I even need to talk about that? You said this statement is false. And then copy and paste. This is part of the overall false narrative being used to falsely accuse Pete of sexual abuse and Joni Lama of covering it up. I said, obviously, there is something much deeper going on. Come on, guys. Come on, Joni. You're asking me to retract that statement, that there's something much deeper going on. As I clearly indicated all throughout the video, my uncertainty was obvious. My willingness to display that I don't know all the facts was obvious. Nothing that I said was stated in a manner as definitive as this is it. No. I was reporting on allegations that were made, and I presented both sides of those allegations. So for you to say that there's something much deeper going on is false. Do I know everything that's going on in this story? No. These are allegations. So there's obviously something much deeper going on because this story is public. And there's disagreements. There's disputes, allegedly. So I don't get that whatsoever. I don't want to. Makes no sense, that statement right there, in response to what I said. It feels very strange. And like I said, I don't know enough to fully speak on this with confidence, but I don't know why people would lie about these situations. I've heard some stories that say like, oh, I've heard some different perspectives, right? I've heard different perspectives that said that Jonathan was just upset that he wasn't put in the same position as his dad when his dad passed away, and that he doesn't want to see his family's business be controlled by somebody from outside the family who could ultimately, steal the business or something like that. And this is interesting because this is what you said, Joni. You said something very similar to this in your statement. And this is the statement that you put out came out after I posted this video. So I even offered your perspective. I offered your side of the story, that your son was upset and because he wasn't put in the position that you have, and that he's, launching this smear campaign. I offered that side of the story before you even posted your video talking about it. So once again, if that's what you want to do, if this is where you want to take it, as you said, Please be further advised that Daystar and Joni Lamb reserve all legal rights available to them, including but not limited to filing a lawsuit for republishing and defamatory statements that Jonathan and Susie have fabricated. If you're going to take it there and file a lawsuit, but not limited to a lawsuit, whatever that means, do what you got to do. I fear God. And Him alone. And you're leading an organization that is supposed to be doing exactly that as well. Fearing God. But for whatever reason, you're blinded to my reporting on this story, and you're not seeing the full picture. You're only seeing what you want to see. And I pray for resolution on both sides. I pray for restoration on both sides. But if that's what you want to do, then hey, the people have seen and have heard what I have to say about this. And I'm sure they can clearly see that I did nothing wrong. Get in my comments. Let me know what you think. I'm out.